Alright, it's 2023 and you are looking to become a web developer in this new year. So from a web developer to an aspiring web developer such as yourself, okay, I'm going to share with you my tips on how you can become a web developer as well, right, in this coming 2023, right? So before we start, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to not miss any new videos or podcasts such as this. Right? So to become a web developer, first thing and most importantly is your attitude, right? So do you think that I was going to say HTML? Well, yes, but your attitude, from my perspective, is the most important because especially in the tech industry. And for example, if you want to become a web developer, right, you have to have the attitude, right? The attitude, right, to say, okay, seems like things are moving quite fast in this industry, right? Does that mean that I have to constantly pick up new skills? And the answer to that is yes. Okay, but before we even get to that, right, you have to lay out your foundation, right, to take your first step to become a web developer, right? There's no going around it, right? So part of that foundation will include first, number one, HTML. Okay, there's no going around it, right? As we all know, web pages, web apps, they all consist of HTML, right? And then to make them look nice, we need CSS, right? So that is why your websites that you frequently visit do not look just plain black and white, right? The CSS styles them and displays your websites in a visually appealing manner, right? So CSS, and on those websites that you frequently visit, right, what happens when you click or drag or some buttons or whatever element on the website? Something has to happen, right? Something has to be interactive, right? That is where number three, JavaScript comes in, right? So these are the three cores, right, of web development you must learn, right, to build up your foundation before we even talk about things like frameworks such as React, right? React, Vue.js, Svelte, and of course the very strong contender, Solid as well. Of course, okay, let's not forget about Angular, yeah, Angular. All right. So once you have a good foundation for HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, okay, so you can actually move on to things such as React. All right. I would say to learn HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, okay, what you can do is, right, create a very simple website, right? If you have no idea where to start, okay, go to one of your favorite websites or even just google.com, right? It's very simple. There's one search bar in the middle of the page, right? Try to recreate that using just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Okay, once you're done that, right, that is already your first step you have taken to becoming a web developer in 2023. All right. So as a good start to your foundation, you can consider moving on to something such as React. And the reason why I suggest React is because of React's very rich ecosystem, right? There are a lot of third-party, well-supported packages or libraries, right, by the community, okay, for React as well. And of course, there are a lot of job openings, right? A lot of jobs related to React that require React. Okay, if you have not tried this before, okay, you can actually check if a website that you are familiar with, right, is using React, right? So for example, for Chrome, right, search for Chrome React Developer Tools, right? Install that extension in Chrome, and a new button with the React logo will appear, okay, usually on the top right corner in your Chrome browser. And if you're on a website and it uses React, okay, that logo will either appear red or blue, right? Usually blue if it's using the production build of React. Okay, once you have that, you might start to notice that almost most, right, of the websites that you visit are using React, right? So that really shows how big the market is for React developers, right? So obviously that is from my front end experience. So I'm going to share with you my front end web development experience and the steps, right, to becoming a web developer in 2023. All right. So React, okay, use this to gain your first foothold, right? Your first step in the web developer market, right? Or tech industry, right? Because the chances are most job openings are just looking for React developers. Yeah, so that is what you really want to be on the lookout for, right? So as to not miss out on any new opportunities, especially if you are in a tight situation and you really want that first web developer position that you are looking for. Yeah, React is the way to go, right? So even if we're talking about React, right, there are still a lot of topics and concepts about React that you really need to get yourself familiarized with, right? So first thing, understand how components work in React. Okay, that is very crucial. Okay, understand the difference between class components and functional components, right? Even though nowadays most web developers, right, they use functional components. Okay, but it is still good to understand class components, okay, and where they come from, right? Especially React still uses class components for error boundaries. Yeah, so good to know. Yeah, good to know the differences. And moving on, make sure you learn about hooks as well, right? So that ties into functional components as well, right? So all these new terms that I just introduced, right? It might sound intimidating to some of you if you're watching this or listening to this, okay? But I can assure you that it is very, very important, right? So if you felt intimidated, okay, one way to get past it or around it is to start practice those concepts, right? Start building apps, right? Using those concepts, right? Practice doing it, learn from your mistakes, okay? So one way to do so, right, is to build up your portfolio or create your portfolio if you have not already done so. Yeah, create a portfolio and say, hey, this is my portfolio. Even though if you do not have any projects, right, under your name, right, in your portfolio, right, create an empty portfolio, okay, and start adding projects to it, okay. So the thing about your portfolio is that it is key, right? It helps, right? It helps a lot when you're trying to land your first web developer position. And even if you do not have any projects at this current point in time, right, you can actually create so-called fake projects, right? With a fake client, right? The term fake it till you make it, it really helps, okay? So why I say that is because you do not need an actual client or someone to create a website or an app for. Okay, you can already create something, for example, such as a simple recipe app or restaurant app, okay, for a fake restaurant that you can come up with a name with, okay? Something as, okay, it could be complex, it could be simple, but something as straightforward as that, right, could be a very good addition to your portfolio. Yeah, so do consider creating your portfolio and have it up as soon as possible, and of course share that portfolio with your potential employer in the future, okay, when if and when you're applying for a web developer position especially in 2023. All right. So in regards to React, okay, while it is by far the biggest market leader in terms of front-end web development frameworks at the current point now, okay, but do be on the lookout for alternative frameworks, right? Front-end web frameworks that you can learn from, right? You can learn new concepts and better practices from, right? For example, a strong alternative would be Svelte. Okay, I mean, some friends that I know of, they are fans of Vue.js, even AngularJS, right? So even though React has the biggest market in terms of job openings, right, do consider alternatives that you can learn from, which would possibly open up new chances, right? New opportunities for you maybe in the near future, right? It's always good to learn new things, right? Which brings us back to having the attitude to be constantly on the learning mindset, yeah? Of course, a very strong contender that I almost forgot to mention is Solid.js, right? Which is what I am interested in recently. If you have been paying attention to our channel, yeah. So that is something that you also do not want to miss out on. All right. So React, okay, alternative frameworks, okay. So in addition to getting a good foundation, right, with your 3 HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and then moving on to frameworks such as React, okay, you might also want to consider, right, learning frameworks that build on top of frameworks, right? Some developers call this meta frameworks. Okay, so for example, we have Next.js, which is a very popular React framework that builds on top of React, right? So Next.js essentially makes your life easier by taking away a bit of your freedom in how you use React.js, but giving you a lot of convenience features, right? So for example, if you were to use just plain React.js, you might have to set up your page routing yourself, right? By installing something such as React Router DOM, for example, right? But if you just use Next.js, right, routing is already built in, right? Either via the pages routing, which is Next.js 12 and below, or the new app subdirectory, which is Next.js 13, yeah, which was just announced not too long ago, right? Yeah, so Next.js is something that you might want to consider learning as well, even though there are some trade-offs that could happen. Yeah, so pros and cons, yeah, as with everything in life, right? So Next.js for React. So in addition to learning HTML, JavaScript, CSS, and of course, front-end web frameworks such as React, Vue, Angular, Svelte, Solid, right? You should also consider learning about front-end build tools, right? Such as Webpack, right? Webpack, Vite, and the recently announced TurboPack, even though TurboPack is still in alpha. So learn about that, but don't use it in production, right? Don't use it. Yeah, it's still very, very buggy. Yeah, so learn about Webpack and learn about Vite and learn about the differences between them. Okay, but from a personal and actually professional opinion, right, perspective of mine, I would say moving forward, you should definitely focus more of your attention on Vite and migrating away from Webpack. Yeah, so if this sounds confusing, it's fine. Do not worry about it because it is good to know. Eventually, you still need to learn about it as you dive deeper, right? As you learn more about React, right? And the various frameworks and what they use under the hood, right? To build your application. Yeah. So Vite, and Webpack. Yeah, learn about those two, and it will also help you in your journey to become a good, right? Not just a web developer, but a good web developer in 2023. All right. All right. Lastly, a very good thing that you can do to become a web developer, a good web developer in 2023, is to come back to this channel, right? And watch out for the 2024 version, right? Because remember what we said about constantly learning new things? Yes, right? 1 year from now, even myself, right, would have grown as a web developer, and I might have new things to share with you as well, right? So be sure to come back, right, for the updated version in 2024. Yeah. So as usual, stay awesome and stay safe, everyone. Cheers, man.